Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our Innovative Strategies for Interpretive Planners webinar. This session is particularly special as we showcase how Lisa Bickell, the esteemed founder and owner of Field to Frame Interpretive Planning and Design, is leveraging Curia to meet her unique interpretive planning needs. A few housekeeping items before we get started. First, this session will be recorded and will be sent out after the webinar. Second, our Q&A section is open. Please send all of your questions there and we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Rich, Curia's Director of Museum and Product and Services. Rich, take it away.
Thank you, Christy, and thank you all for attending this webinar. I'm happy to see so many people interested in learning more about Curia and how Curia can help you tell your stories. My name is Richard Scott. I am the Director of Museum Products and Services. I'm basically the Chief Curia Evangelist and Champion. And first, I'd like to introduce Clay Osborne. Clay is a senior full-stack developer and software architect. Clay has been involved with the development of Curia from the very beginning and is currently making ongoing enhancements to Curia based on feedback and suggestions from all Curia users. At Curia, we want to help you tell your story, and we are and will continue to be responsive to the needs of this community. We've made enhancements based on feedback from Curia users on how Curia can provide additional functionality to interpretive planners, including our guest today, Lisa Bickell. Lisa is an interpretive planner who works with organizations and agencies through media design and implementation. She started her business in 2019 after 20 years in the field of environmental and natural history education, working for small museums and nonprofits. Today, she helps organizations and agencies share their stories through interpretive media and exhibits while ensuring they meet their goals. Lisa, take it away.
All right. Well, thanks for popping in today, taking up part of your afternoon to check out this project or this platform, and I guess through the lens of my projects. So anyway, this will be interesting. Chance for you to learn about a couple different things. If you have questions, drop them in the chat about any of this stuff, and I'll do my best to showcase how I've been using Curia to organize myself a little bit better. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see if we can do this. Share my window, and I'm going to share this one. All right, here we go. All right. So in theory, are you looking at my platform?
All good.
Awesome. Yep. Great. Awesome. Okay. So when I had the opportunity to try Curia out, I'd completed a couple of different plans recently. And so what I decided to do was use Curia to kind of retroactively organize my plans, which maybe sounds a little strange, but I probably do 1 to 2 interpretive plans a year, sometimes more on different scales. So right here you see basic plan, full plan, and that's just my own language for basic plan is kind of a smaller plan. It's an organization that doesn't need like a big public process. They probably need me to go through just a couple of different constituent meetings, maybe. They don't need a lot of information to guide their process. So it's a smaller effort, so I can do more of those throughout the year. A full interpretive plan is kind of a big effort. There's a lot more public involvement. That one was like a big master plan. It was a really massive undertaking. So with those, what I wanted to do is test this out to see how this works so that when I kind of have my next opportunity, I can see how I'm going to plan ahead to use Curia and plan how I'm going to use these tools as I am going through it kind of live. So I'm going to walk you through how I set up the platform for these projects. And like I said, these are both kind of retroactive. I've already done these projects. But what is really cool is with both of them, I also had the opportunity to do the design work. So I did the plan and then was hired my company was hired to actually do the on-the-site design work. And one of them, I'm still in the process of doing it. So I'm using Curia to organize the assets and the writing for the design work. So I'll show you how I'm doing that. So first thing I had to do was organize the platform. And I worked with Rich to kind of figure out what's the best way to organize this for my thought process and how I work with my clients. So I went through and I came up with some system labels that fit how I work with my clients and how I guide them through the interpretive planning process. So if you've gone through interpretive planning with a consultant, if you've gone through training for interpretive planning, this might be familiar to you. It might be a little different. Interpretive planners sometimes approach this differently, but we go through, I go through visitor experience phases in my interpretive planning. And so I kind of broke up my platform into these experience phases. So that's my big hierarchy, or my big, the way I structure my tiers. And so visitor experience phases is like the big starting point. And then we go into the areas. And so the areas are kind of like the rooms or the parts of the trail or the areas of the garden. So once you get to the, and I'll show you what those phases are so that makes sense to you in just a minute. And then the detailed location is like once you're in the museum, for example, it's where in the museum, what room in the museum, what part of that exhibit. So it gets really detailed, and this will all kind of start to make sense. So I had to first figure out this structural hierarchy. Then I went into the, let's see, I think it's the, that's all written down. Interpretive.
Probably interpretive plan categories, I'm thinking. Or okay.
Yeah, interpretive plan categories. That's what it was. Oh no, it wasn't that one. It was this one. Experience. This one. That's what I wanted to show you.
Yep.
Yeah. So then the next thing was I had to figure out what are my experience phases, and so this is how I break down. So first I have my system labels, and these are like those are my big tiers. And so for each of these experience phases, I had to break those down even further. And so these are the different phases that once I'm starting to think about how a visitor experiences a place, we talk about a visitor approaches a place. They have to learn about it first. That's the pre-trip experience. Websites, brochures, signage, lots of different ways a visitor could learn about your place. Their arrival experience, that's how they get to you. So that could be signage on the road. It could be the signage that gets them to the front door. It's the walking to the building experience or the driving to, biking to, how they arrive there. The planned interpretive experience, that's the thing we always want to talk about. That's the actual, you're in the experiencing the actual media. That's what you are setting out in front of them so they can learn about your experience. And then the exit experience is as they leave, what they take with them, because best case, we've provided this really cool experience for them. They're going to take something with them and actually go and do something with it. So that's sort of our goal for interpretation. So once I've set those all up, then I've kind of created some of that framework so I can start to plug my interpretive plan into it. So I'm going to walk you back out, and you'll get to see some of these other categories over here because these all kind of apply to a lot of my different elements, but these are all different things that I kind of tweaked as I was building my plan. But if we go back to my big categories, let's just open up one and see what it actually looks like. So Rocky Mountain Gardens is one of my smaller plans for just a small kind of a county extension garden. So it's an experiential garden space where the weed district wanted to be able to show people what or how they can grow orchards or berry gardens, vegetable gardens, native plant gardens, those kinds of things. And so this was a brand new space. They hadn't planted it yet. And they wanted to plan for interpretation while they were planning the design of this thing. So you can see how all of those different categories that I put together, the experience phases, kind of lined up. And that helped me organize how I was presenting the interpretive plan to them in these different phases. Now, another really important piece were these visitor outcomes. So interpretive planning and interpretive design, all of these things are always based on goals and objectives. So you really have to be thinking about kind of where you're heading with your project, usually pretty early in the project. So I put in what we had outlined for our objectives, our visitor objectives, our outcomes early in the project. And so here's kind of some of the things that we had outlined. And there's quite a few listed here. But this was nice to be able to import all this information. And I'm going to show you later where this pops up and how truly helpful it is to have it. So all of these are outcomes that the organization wanted to be able to achieve through interpretation in the garden space in some way. So we go back to the plan details, and in each of these, you can kind of open them up and you can start to see how you can populate it with information. Here, they really only had one area where they focus their pre-trip experience. It's their website. And so I just dropped a picture of what their website looked like, and I had some recommendations for it. The arrival experience kind of focused on the garden, garden map, and then some entrance signage. And let me see if I can figure out where my scrolling is. There it is. But I think the really interesting stuff with these guys is their planned interpretive experience. And so they have a lot of different elements planned here. It's not a very big garden. It's only about 2.5 acres, but they have a lot planned. Some temporary signage to kind of highlight the fact that it's gardens are always changing. They're going to be trying out new things because it's a food garden and it's basically in an urban environment. You can imagine there'll be all kinds of crazy stuff that happen, like aphids showing up. And so it'll be an opportunity to throw in a sign that says, hey, we have aphids in our garden. Here's what we're doing. And so you can have temporary signs that pop up that show visitors that this is an organization that's responding quickly to, in a changing way to whatever's happening in the garden, which will be kind of fun. We came up with an interesting icon system to kind of communicate things like this water is an example of how you can show plants are drought tolerant using icons. And so this is what I'm doing here with these images is I've actually started to switch from using Curia as a planning tool to my design organization tool. And so I've put in all my assets that are my design assets. So these icons are finished icons that I've already hired and paid the artist to do. And now I've put them in here so I can organize them. What I've always done are use like files, whatever file system I have to organize all of my information. This is a little bit easier because I can see it quickly. In one area, I can see all of my images in one place. And so it's easier for me just to open this up and see everything in one spot instead of having to have a bunch of folders open and looking at thumbnails, and they're really small. And so this is really nice. I like it for that. Let's take a look at pollinator lawn. This one is the sign we're working on right now. It's the most developed. And so right now we have some almost finished illustrations for this panel. So all of these illustrations have been approved, basically finished. And and Rich, you just let me know if anything is confusing that I'm talking about here, but I'm gonna go ahead and open up right here. So this element outdoor interpretive panel. So what I did is I created over here on the left under settings, you have these interpretive models and elements. You can go in there and you can edit whatever you use for your media. And media is kind of like a broad, for some of you who are interpretive planners or deep in the field, I'm being very repetitive talking about stuff you already know. But basically media of all the things, the brochures, the signs.
Methods of engagement, right?
Methods of engagement, exactly. And so a lot of the ones that I left in there, let's just click over there and look. A lot of these are the ones that Curia just had in there as default, and I've left them in there because they're interesting. I was like, well, I might use those someday. Let's just leave them in there. Some of these online website, those are things I put in there. Rack card, one of my clients wanted a promotional rack card, so I put that in there. I put in the custom high pressure laminate interpretive panel just because pretty much everybody I do work for wants one of those. And then when I get into that interpretive panel, I have like the choice of small panel or I call it a standard panel, which is basically, you know, you guys all know this. It's like the 3 foot by 2 foot standard one that everybody likes, national parks use. Audio guide, I've used that one. And so these are just, and I can hit add to add more, which is kind of nice. And so that's what that ends up, those are what those little items are. And so I just add those as I go.
And then did you add further interpretive, what we're calling now interpretive elements to your types as well?
Did. So I added like this entrance sign. I think this temporary, that's the temporary event and highlight sign. Yep. A lot of these plant identification label for the Rocky Mountain Gardens, a lot of these little elements. And then some of these are some that I think that Curia left in there. And so I've just left a bunch in there just because I think they're interesting. Oh yeah, and there's the CHPL in there, which is kind of neat. So if we go back here, I'm going to show you what that, I'm going to scroll, hang on to your eyes while we scroll through this. Okay, so when I go to this outdoor interpretive panel, I can click on this little edit button, and now you can see what I've input here. So there's my interpretive panel. I've clicked on standard interpretive panel. I've called it, now outdoor interpretive panels is literally what I called it in the interpretive plan. So that's just the name I gave it in the interpretive plan. Could be more creative than that, but that's what it was. Purpose is what was written in the actual interpretive plan. Usually, and again, this one was a small meaning like we didn't spend a huge amount of time. We kind of moved through this quickly. So I didn't really charge them like that much money. We kind of made this like a fast project. So I didn't do any actual interpretive content. I didn't do any draft signs for them, anything like that. All I did was we kind of came up with what we think we would do here, where this would probably be, and we kind of came up with some possible storylines. So here are some just ballpark concepts. That was about all we did for this. The whole point of this was to give them some broad guidelines so that then they could move forward to the next step and then get into the meat in the actual design process, which is where we are now. So now here's where I think Curia shines, like right now in my heart. It gets really hard. You know, you're doing a lot of work as an interpretive planner. You're kind of managing a lot of details, and one of the things you're really supposed to be doing is going back and making sure that all the decisions you're making are addressing the needs of your audience and making sure they're fitting within the criteria of your site needs and meeting your visitor outcomes and your site goals. And boy, sometimes it's hard to remember to go back and check that list. But here's the list. And so this is super cool. So here I am putting together this sign, and now I can go down here and say, all right, which outcomes does this sign address? And this would be hard for you to read really quickly. I'm pretty familiar with it. So I can probably quickly look here and say, you know, people that visit this, read this sign, because I kind of know the content. I bet this is a pollinator lawn sign. So if you come and read this sign, you're going to get a sense of, and actually, yeah, you're going to get a chance to learn about taking your grass yard out and plant a pollinator lawn. So something with a little mix of like clover or maybe even a few native plants. You're going to stop mowing as much, and you probably won't be using pesticides. You might get some ideas for gardening with wildlife there. You'll learn that the Missoula County Department of Ecology and Extension is a reliable resource for science information. And then it does have information for how to get help from staff. So these are some great goals. So I would hit that. I'm going to update that actually, and then I'm going to go back into it. I shouldn't have closed it. Let's go back into it because I want to show you this. For this one, I actually do have interpretive content because we've already written a draft for this sign. And so this is exactly right now what we're drafting with those pictures I showed you, which is pretty neat. And I'm going to close this because I want to show you something cool about that. So I'm going to scroll back up here. Hold on to your hats. Here we go. Now, across the top, there's all these little buttons. Right here is one called labels. If I click on that, I'm going to open this up and it's going to take me a minute because I'm going to have to get you to the site where this is. So hold on a second. I'm going to share this tab instead. All right. Are you seeing my new tab?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So this is kind of fun. So what I can do is all of those little pieces that I had on my other panel, I actually was able to drag around and put in here, like the clover piece and the grass pieces and all that text I could put into this new thing. Now, this is not exactly a panel I would design and say, here, client, go ahead and print this and stick this in your garden. But this is almost what I drew on a piece of paper and gave to my graphic designer, because I don't actually do graphic design. I work with a graphic designer and I hire my artist and I work on the writing and I give all these pieces to my partner and I kind of sketch it out kind of like this. And I say, this is kind of what I had in mind. Take this and work your magic and let's see what we can come up with together. And so this is conceptual, and this is kind of a fun way to take all those pieces and conceptually build an interpretive panel concept, like idea. So anyway, it worked out pretty well.
And you can export that and give it to your graphic designer, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it was kind of a nice little fun tool to be able to take the pieces that I'm collecting and then put them into something that I can then send to the graphic designer in a way that didn't have me trying to draw a butterfly or a clover or whatever. So that was kind of a nice thing.
Now,
I appreciate that.
hey, Lisa, I don't know whether you did it with this client or, I think you and I talked about it at one time, but there might be an opportunity in this case, right? You see the comments tab there, where you could actually give your client access to Curia so that they could take a look at what you're proposing and provide comments to you right here within the application. Right?
Yeah, that'd be neat. Yeah, so we just had some general ideas, like this is kind of the idea, the layout idea that could work. All right, I'm gonna sneak back to my other one. Okay, so that was that. I'm gonna go back here and show you one other neat thing. And I want to show you my other plan. The other thing I like about this is I mentioned that it just helps me stay a little bit better organized. And so here on the right are a lot of my assets. So this project is going to have a huge number of illustrations. We're going to have at least 2 different artists working on plant and insect illustrations. And I appreciate that I can drop all the illustrations in over here, and that way I can see what I have. And then as I go into the areas on the left, I can look and see where I'm assigning them. So as I move them over and say, all right, I'm going to use this shooting star in the native forbs and prairie, that means I've got some other versions of her shooting star available for other parts of the garden. If I want to make duplicates, I just have to make a second version of that same image and just put it into Curia and put it into a different garden. So it's kind of a nice way for me to stay organized and see where I'm using them. Because at some point, honestly, this is a lot of images for me to be trying to keep track of where they're going. And I can invite my graphic designer to be using the same platform. And so she and I can be looking at this together, which I think is kind of fun. It's just a really handy way to see how this is all going to come together. All right, I want to slip back out here because I want to show you the other one real quick. because along those notes, so Fort Owen State Park was a much bigger project. I actually just put this one together really quickly just so that you could see a slightly different version. I did not put everything in there because it was pretty intensive, but it is a different style. This one had a historical element to it, and while there are no artifacts actually kept on site, we had a lot of artifacts we had to share. But what I liked about Fort Owen was, again, there were three different actual artists on the project, but then we had so many historical pictures. And so that's where Curia would have been super helpful for keeping myself organized. And in particular, this one would have been helpful, I think, for getting the image credits right. So this one had a lot of different image credits that we had to manage. And so each of our artists wanted their name shared differently. And so, whenever we shared Frank Finley's name, he wanted Frank Finley Salish because he's a Salish artist, Indigenous artist. And then whenever we shared Meg Hansen, she wanted her company, her business shared. But then we had all these historic images, and every single one of those had to have this really crazy long credit that was related to wherever the art was being housed in whoever's permanent collection was in. So anyway, that would have been really nice to have. Plus, we had some historic elements or some, let's see if they're down in here somewhere. Oh, I think they're down here in the exit experience. So we had some different artifacts. And so just keeping track of which artifacts we were sharing and what part of because we were going back and forth. Where are we going to share the brooch on the brochure, or are we going to share the brooch on the panel in the guest room? And so things were moving back and forth in the design process. So that was interesting. So again, with Fort Owen, I did the interpretive plan and kind of went through all of these experience phases and added that information. But then when I got to the design part, it would have been super cool to be able to just drop a lot of these assets in there to keep track of them. I would have really appreciated that organizational tool.
No, then too, you said things were moving around a lot. You can just drag it. You can just pull them up and down. I don't know. You haven't really
That's right.
had a need to do that in this plan for the
I
folks that
have.
were all watching, but
Yeah. So here, let's do that here. So like this guest room, for example. So this necklace, it's actually in two places. So like here, I can just drag that and I can plop it here, and now it's there. So it actually appeared in two different resources, and so now there it is. And actually this thing, so this dress actually ended up being here, and so now I just drop it. Let's see, did it go? No, it's not going to want to go. Come on, go. There it is. Now it went. Yeah. So there it is, which is pretty neat.
so it allows you to rearrange your plan when there's changes that you need to make in your thinking. And I'll add too, because I don't know if you have anything right now. If you had, for example, if you had an element attached to an object, right? The element would travel with the object wherever you drag the object to, right? So it keeps the integrity of your interpretive content with the item that it's describing, right?
That's exactly right. And the other thing, so I'm going to go back to the Rocky Mountain Gardens. The other thing I liked, and with this one I've done it, is I can include documents. So right now I've got things like my target audience. I put this in here just the other day. My target audience is the profiling market art audience description. So that's the information we put together on who we expect to attend the garden and who we hope to recruit or attract to the garden. Our site parameters. So this was the description of what the site is like and what's going to impact the interpretation of the site. And then the last thing was an accessibility, I guess it was an accessibility review that we did with Summit Independent Living and the University of Montana's Rural Institute, where we kind of looked at what we need to do with interpretation to make it more accessible to pretty much everyone in our community. And so that entire review is included in there as a separate separate document, just because it didn't really fit anything else in the plan. And then there's other documents I could add in there. So at least they're in there now, which is pretty cool. So those are the big things. I also did stick in here. Right now I have in my project management, this is what I'm doing right now for my interpretive design part. So this is pretty cool. I do find this kind of this has been hard for me to find as somebody that organizes my stuff I really like these charts. I like to be able to see, I don't know why, I just like these charts. But to be able to see what I have coming up, potentially even on calendar wise. But this helps me kind of understand like where I am with all of my different elements. So this shows me where right now we're in the writing phase, and we can still be writing until basically February. And then we've got some original artwork time still, and then all of a sudden we're gonna have to start designing. So this is kind of neat. So that's our design for Rocky Mountain Gardens timeline. And so as I get new projects, I can start to put them in there, and then I'll be able to see how they're overlapping and potentially conflicting with each other. Hopefully not too much. So yeah, so I think that's kind of what I had for most of my.
While you're here, Lisa, I think that if you this project, wasn't this the one that was linked to your Rocky Mountain Garden
Yes.
interpretive plan?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I think that link, if you scroll up, is it on this page? Yeah. So there you can toggle back and forth between the interpretive plan.
Oh yeah, right.
And the project plan. Yeah.
Which is cool. Yeah, which is kind of, I mean, it's a nice way to help keep myself better organized, which is, inevitably like the goal, right? And I really like that. I think that's something. Another thing I'll show you, which is I think really neat. Like here, let's see if it's on there. Oh yeah, this is neat. I liked this. This has been, I mean, I'm able to put in my budget. So this is how much money I have for the original artwork for the project. And this is what we're thinking. $350 per panel. Actually, I think the cost already went up, so I'm gonna have to edit that because we had a meeting. We have to increase the cost because costs always go up, you guys. So anyway,
you can capture the actual spend too, so you can see the differential
yeah.
between.
So, and I haven't billed them yet, and so as we do, and then we can work on our percent complete, which is pretty cool. And so then it'll make some updates. So I really like that. So this is a way that I can keep track. Because my invoicing software right now doesn't necessarily always keep track of some of this stuff, like percent complete. I like to send my clients progress reports that show this stuff, and so I can really use this system to match my tasks with my invoicing, with my all of my different billing and all that other stuff, which I don't know, it's really cool. Or my with my proposals, things like that. So I don't know. I liked that element, that it was all connected. I thought that was pretty clever.
And you get reminders of your tasks, so it won't let you forget that you have something coming up.
Yeah. As soon as I put all this in, I got all these notices that you've been assigned. It's like, oh, look at that. So yeah, other things, little things like I edited all my object columns. So when I was in my this one is probably the most developed, but in here, when I was creating my objects, I just set up my objects the way that they worked for me. So I limited the information to what I end up needing. So the question I always get, I don't necessarily always need an object number, but I usually need to know who the artist is. I always need to know how to credit it. And I'm always asked, what is the resolution or the DPI of the image for print resolution, things like that. So I kind of adjusted that to what I need. And so you can always adjust those to whatever information is most relevant to your things. So that's kind of neat. I thought that was clever.
Yeah, and I mean, there's different organizations. Obviously, if for example a museum was using Curia, they would have a whole lot more probably object details and object information that they would be interested in bringing into Curia, because all these fields that you're collecting there, right?
Mhm.
And I know you know this already, Lisa, but all the fields that you collect on these objects are all available to drag into your label, for example, right? So
Mhm.
you could, if you were doing a panel or something and you wanted to have a credit line, you just drag that credit line into the label, and voila, you have your credit line right in the panel.
Yeah.
Um, so um, yeah, we made it the when Curia out of the box defaults to a list of objects, but uh, and we integrate with EMU and Past Perfect and TMS, and we have a default list of objects, but everyone can add or remove or change all of those object details in whatever way they want.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so far it's been really helpful to get organized. And I think the thing that I have not been able to use yet, that I'm pretty interested in trying out, is the evaluation tool up here. And
Yep.
so this I have not had a chance to try out, and it's really only because I haven't had a chance to use Curia while I'm actually implementing an interpretive plan, while I'm in the interpretive planning process. Um, when I was doing the Rocky Mountain Gardens interpretive plan, for example, we had a like a large group um, information gathering experience where I could have imagined that it would have been really great to be able to have like QR codes where I asked questions and it would have linked people to a website, to this website where I could have had them input their information. And then I could have collected it here instead
Yep.
of on sticky notes, for example, that I had to then later go and plug into something else. So this would be like a little bit more seamless way for me to gather information rather than having to use paper. Um, so
Yep.
I
Oh
do
yeah,
look forward.
there's a lot of ways that you can the evaluation is, gives you the ability to create whatever kind of a form that you would like to create. You can you could put an image in there and reference the image with some questions. For example, you can put check boxes or radio buttons or whatever, however you want your survey or form to look, you can create, right? You can you once done and you publish it, you'll be able to capture a link. You can put that link behind a QR code. You could send that link out via email if you have a list of folks that you'd like to gather some input from. All of that data is collected within the application, and you can export the data that you collected and analyze it in whatever way you'd like. Um, but this is a central repository for all of the evaluation, summative, formative, whatever types of evaluation you need to do to support the interpretive planning process that you're executing. So it's nice to have it all in one place that you can refer back to too.
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, that gives you a little overview of how I've been using it. It's been interesting and yeah, like I said, a nice way to keep my materials organized and
It's a
um,
beautiful that just visually, it's absolutely beautiful looking at the at what you created here, Lisa.
I
So
know, right? It does.
um,
It helps to work with some very talented artists. I will say, I get lucky. So
all
yeah.
right, so um, I think we'll wrap up there, and I think we have some questions, so maybe Christy can come back and
Yes.
Yeah. Let
Yep,
me
we
see.
have a bunch of questions. So, first up, is there a component or field to describe a target audience and build visitor profiles?
So well, I'm not sure. I want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly, and maybe Lisa, you can help me. So we have obviously themes that you put in at various different locations throughout the interpretive plan. Visitor profiles. I don't, other than the visitor outcomes, we really don't have any place yet that you can describe visitor information, visitor profile information, but that's absolutely something that we could add.
Mhm.
Okay. Another one was, can the images and other collection items be tied with a specific barcode?
Oh.
Read that. Can you say that again, Christy?
Yep. Can the images and other collection items be tied with a specific barcode?
So, Clay, it- I'll ask you. I mean, it sounds like what they're asking is if we could have a field on an object that would contain a barcode. I'm guessing it would be the object ID.
Hmm. So generate a barcode from data and put it in. I mean,
That's what it feels like they're
yeah,
asking. Maybe whoever asked that question can clarify if that's what they're asking.
yeah. And
Um,
unless it's a, a case where a barcode's being
Yeah,
uploaded
they said that is
as the image.
correct. Yep, so
Oh.
that's what they're asking.
they
Okay.
said it's correct. So would we be able to generate a barcode and have it as one of the object information fields? Like I said, likely off of the object ID because that's a
Mhm.
unique identifier for an object, right?
Mhm. Yeah, right now it does not, but I mean, again, we are pretty open to suggestions. We see a suggestion over and over, it's more likely we are going to, implement such a feature. I can see a barcode working, there being a barcode field that just whatever you put into the field, that's what the barcode reader would get out of the barcode.
Right.
But yeah, it doesn't do that right now.
Okay, next up is, does your graphic designer, client, any collaborative partner need to also have Curia in order to collaborate with assets or make comments, or can they use a guest essentially?
So your partner or collaborator would access Curia. Um, you as the admin or contributor within Curia for your tenant could add them as what we call a viewer commenter. They would get an email, and all they'd have to do is set up, their access to Curia via that email. Um, and they would come in as a viewer commenter and make comments where they can make comments, update tasks if they're assigned tasks, and see the content of the interpretive plan or project plan if you have given them access. So once they're a user within your tenant of Curia, you get to control what they're able to see. But yes, they'd have to log into Curia. Curia is online, so it's a SaaS application. You can access it anywhere from your phone, from any mobile device, from your laptop, anywhere that there's an internet connection. So it's very accessible.
Okay, then we have, can you turn it into a printable budget report sheet broken down by categories and elements of the plan?
I think they're asking, it sounds like they're asking for a report on the project management
Oh, yeah.
module.
Mhm.
Claire, are those fields exposed in the reporting tool right now?
No, the reporting tool is object oriented currently. The main interpretive plan has an interpretive plan report that comes out, which is just a dump of all the data in the tree. But project management you can export the different graphs. You can choose a range where to export or export what you're looking at. You can export the calendar. It doesn't have like a budget to spend like analysis or any kind of calculations going on.
Hmm.
And then it says, what is the output for the client and what do you deliver?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that sounds a little bit more like a question for Lisa, but out of
Sure.
Curia, um, you know, when you talk about creating an interpretive plan within Curia, as Clay just mentioned, you can export that interpretive plan in its entirety, literally everything, or whatever components of that interpretive plan you want to export right from the application. That I would expect would be a starting point. And Lisa, you can correct me if I'm wrong if you use it in that way, but I would expect it in many cases. It's a starting point for the ability to deliver a document that is an interpretive plan to a client.
Yes. Yeah, and what I did was I downloaded. Do you want me to share the downloaded interpretive plan?
You can, yeah.
Okay. I will attempt to do that. Oh, I don't know if I can. Let's see if I can. Oh, here we go. Microsoft Word. Are you seeing my Word document?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Nope. Okay, I have no idea how to share a Word document then. This will be like one of those things where you're like, I'm going to share something. Let's see, window.
You'd have to share that screen if you have it open.
Not now.
Okay.
It's like the thing where it's like, yeah. So, well, what I'll say this. Okay, so what you can do is download, so you can download the entire plan. What it does do is it gives you all these radio buttons of what pieces of the thing that you built you want to download, and it'll download kind of what I would say is a rough version of an interpretive plan. And so what I would do, I haven't done it yet because, like I said, these are kind of retroactive. It's retroactive use of Curia. But what I would do is if I were building this in real time, I would take this version of the Word documents. I'd download all this content from Curia. I would take this version of Word and I'd probably format it as my new interpretive plan. And so I would go through and I would make it look a little bit more like what I would want to present to a client. But it would have everything like the goals that I put in there. It would have my central theme in there. It would have the different things that I wanted to accomplish in each of the different areas of the spaces, things like that. So it would be some of the content for my interpretive plan. There might be some other things I have to throw in there, like appendices, things like that. But it would have a lot of the meat, but it wouldn't be formatted exactly. So it probably wouldn't be. It's sort of like when you saw that draft version of the buzzworthy lawn sign. It's like pretty close. Same thing. It's pretty close. It has most of the meat, but you just need to kind of tweak it a little bit. So yeah, so it has some of it. And then in terms of like, what is it that you're going to give to the client? So it's sort of like it's an organizational tool to help you figure out what you're going to give to your client. So it's just another way to kind of keep yourself organized and moving forward with your client. So that's kind of the way I look at it, or that's how I'm using it, I guess. But it depends. It all really depends on what you put in there. So the more detailed information you put in there, the more detailed information you're going to get out of it on the other end. So that's the other piece of it too.
Okay, and then we have another question. It says, how does Curia integrate with other tools or software?
Currently, we integrate with EMU, TMS, and Past Perfect, and we're open to other collection management systems. We've considered and are obviously and willing to partner with folks using Curia to talk about how AI might help in some areas of Curia. We're open to integrations, especially with any application that has an open API. But right now, as it stands now, we integrate with 3 collection management systems: TMS, EMU, and Past Perfect.
Okay, and then the other one was, are there any specific hardware requirements or limitations for running Curia?
Nope, it's all in the cloud. So go to curia.com, sign up. You can do a free trial today. You can sign up, and again, you can access Curia anywhere there's an internet connection.
Someone said, for the evaluations, I currently use team forms. Can that be integrated or stored in Curia?
I know Clay, you just unmuted, so maybe you want to take that.
Teams or Microsoft Forms?
It says Teams forms, but my
Teams
assumption
forms.
would be the Microsoft
The
forms.
Microsoft Forms product. I mean, those are online as well, so there would be a URL that would drive that. There isn't an actual downloadable file you'd be able to put into Curia. But and we don't integrate with Microsoft Forms currently. That's not to say we can't in the future, but right now, we have our evaluations is its own form designer that's built in, similar to Microsoft Forms, that is within Curia. So if you
Or
have
potentially import the results, right?
import the results.
Yeah.
It's when they answer the form, that comes in. It's kind of stored in the Microsoft form. But yeah, Curia, we don't interact with, we're not hooked up with Microsoft Forms currently. We have our own forms designer.
Okay, and the last question I have is, can you describe the pricing structure? Is it annual or monthly? Does everyone in your organization need a paid for account to collaborate on projects?
Okay, so that I'll make this very simple. So there's really just there's a license, right? So let's just talk about a single license. A single license includes a contributor, which is the person that actually puts their fingers on the keyboard and creates the interpretive plan or a project plan within Curia, and that license also comes with 5 viewers/commenters. So you could have 5 additional people within your organization be collaborators and provide comments and see the interpretive plans and project plans that you're working on. And that license also includes 50,000 objects. So that's one license. That license can be paid for monthly. It's $60 a month monthly. It's $50 a month if paid annually. And again, you can sign up right online. So the number of licenses you need will be determined by how many people do you need to be contributors, or how many viewers/commenters do you need, or how many objects do you have that you need to upload or otherwise integrate into the tool. That determines how many licenses you need.
Okay, well, those are all the questions that we had come in. So I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. If you're interested in trying Curia, visit curia.com. We offer a free trial for you to see if Curia will work for you. Our contact information will be sent out at the end of the webinar along with the recording. So please reach out if you have any questions or want to learn more. Thanks so much for joining us today.